It's our second and last day in Armenia.
And we were about to depart from Yerevan and go on a half-day tour with a group around central Armenia.
First to the Charents Arch, then to the Gerard Monastery near the town of Gocht in Kotak province, then to the Symphony of Stones in Garni, and next to the Garni pagan temple, then having a local lunch at the village before returning to Yerevan to catch our bus back to Tbilisi, Georgia. So in the early morning after waking up, my uncle and I walked through the Northern Avenue, a pedestrian street that cuts through the central axis of Yerevan, and then boarded a bus with the tour group one-way tour.
This is not a promotional video or advertisement for the company, by the way. I just booked the tour with this group and the tour guide was great. I unfortunately forgot to ask for his name and such, but I do hope if you book with them, you run into some guy, tall and young, not much older than me. I'm 21 for context.
Our first stop was right outside the city of Yerevan, on a mountain road at the Charents Arch. This was built and named after the Armenian poet Yegishe Charents, and the architect who designed this specifically chose this location because it overlooks the majestic snow-capped peaks of Mount Ararat, alternatively called Mount Masis in traditional Armenian and used interchangeably with the biblical name Ararat. It's one of the most important national symbols of Armenia and even depicted on the coat of arms of the Republic of Armenia. Even though the regions around the mountain had been conquered by the Ottomans 500 years ago,
and the Armenian population being forcibly depopulated in the Harpa genocide just a century ago.
In 1918, the newly independent First Republic of Armenia briefly regained control of Ararat and other parts of former Western Armenia, but again lost Ararat permanently in 1921 in an agreement to end the war with the Turkish Ankara government, in an agreement that set the border between Armenia and Turkey and the Aras River, as Mount Ararat was on the other side of the Aras.
Although Armenia no longer officially claims Mount Ararat as their territory, the mountain is still one of the most important symbols of their nation and lies close to every Armenian's heart.
Up next, we arrived at the Gerard Monastery.
The Armenian word Gerard literally means spear and is the most known for a spear. The Monastery of the Spear. Yeah, that's because it's believed that a spear was used to injure Jesus at the crucifixion and was later brought from Palestine to Armenia by Saint Judas Thaddeus, one of Jesus' 12 disciples.
This spear remained in the monastery through multiple rounds of destruction by both invaders and natural disasters like earthquakes, as the only surviving relic of the monastery until the 17th century, when it was transferred to the Ejmiadzin Cathedral located west of Yerevan.
Lots of ancient artifacts were donated to the Gerard Monastery, including relics and works of art related to apostles Thaddeus, Andrew, and John, but none of them survived to the modern day.
The Gerard Monastery was carved into the adjacent mountain and has a 1700-year-old sacred water fountain that the visitors frequently come to take a sip from. But I skipped it after seeing so many coins thrown in there. Like, only God knows how contaminated this 17th centuries-old water source must be.
Especially after learning that this monastery was forbidden from conducting religious services during the Soviet times and sometimes used as a warehouse to store dirty materials. Out of respect and lack of knowledge, I of course didn't say that on the spot and kept it in my mind. But according to our tour guide, even after the independence of Armenia and removing laws that prohibited religious gatherings, the Gerard Monastery still doesn't conduct services as it's not located very close to populated settlements, and even its closest villages have churches of their own. So the Gerard Monastery just became a historical building for tourism and learning history instead. This monastery has a lot of rooms,
and some of them have quite low entrances, which made it a little fun to navigate. In the backyard of the monastery, there was a forest path and a mini bridge that went over a stream that I believe is the Azat River, and the path leads to a cave that we had no time to continue exploring on as we needed to head to our next destination. We arrived at the Symphony of Stones, where I paid for the ticket that cost 300 Armenian dram or 1.08 SGD or 75 US cents using my Singapore bank card.
which I was surprised that it worked. It was my first time using my bank card overseas. Thank you, Armenia, for being the first foreign country where I used my card. Shtorhakalutyun Hayastan.
Following the footpath, I saw a majestic natural rock formation that stretched for hundreds of meters into the distance. As I walked along, I understood why the rock formation was called a symphony. The shape of the stone formations looked very musical to me.
And I, as a musician studying in a music conservatory, approve of this name. It's either that or the name is a placebo that the locals came up with to attract more visitors, but hey, even if it is that, it works.
And it doesn't disappoint at all.
This one's called a Symphony of Stones. Natural rock formation. It says some of the rocks may be falling over there, but it's generally very safe. Very majestic. It's natural. Like all those pillars, it looks so squarish, so angular, but apparently it's a natural formation.
The footpath stretches for kilometers along the flow of the Azaz River, wrapping and going around the entire village of Garni before joining back at a road. We again didn't have time to walk the whole path, heck, not even half the path down to the Garni Gorge, before we had to get on the bus again for our next stop. Our next stop is the Garni Pagan Temple, which is the best known symbol of the pre-Christianity Armenia. It was used for multiple different religions, predominantly for human sacrifices to ancient Greek gods. Armenia used to be ruled by Greeks for centuries before Christianity, and later Romans too, which explains why it's thought to be a sacrificial pit for Greek gods. Some other scholars believe it was actually a tomb or a mausoleum that was built on top of an ancient Urartu site. The Urartians were the predecessors of the oldest Armenian kingdoms.
And despite not being related linguistically, the Armenians still claim to be the descendants of Urartians because of a cultural continuation and also partial genetic continuation.
We also went to a nearby Roman bathhouse that used to have warm and hot bath water sections, highlighting the technological advancements of those times at heating large volumes of water for communal use. In the later centuries, a church was built on top of the pagan temple after the adoption of Christianity by Armenia, and later a tomb and also a chapel beside, but they were destroyed by natural disasters and never rebuilt, except the pagan temple whose reconstruction was finished in 1976 in the exact same way it was 1900 years ago. After finishing the tour around the pagan temple site, we went back to the village of Garni and had lunch at the local host place. We had freshly baked puffy thin bread from those grandmas who let us take a look at how they made bread and also other foods. My uncle especially wanted to try Armenian freshwater fish because we didn't have a chance to try it in Sevan the previous day due to not wanting to miss the bus back to Yerevan. We had a great lunch, but I didn't take any pictures of it on camera, so enjoyed this pretty mini rose garden in the guest house backyard.
Soon it was time to head back to Yerevan. At last, we went back to our hostel in Yerevan after alighting from the bus, then took our bags and called a cab to Tbilisi, Georgia. Our visit to Armenia, only 2 days long, was really not enough to experience the whole country. Even though Armenia is not a big country, there were two main things that I didn't get to experience at Armenia. Number one, the lifts, the elevators. My uncle and I never took an elevator during our 2 day long trip in Armenia, and I didn't manage to figure out whether the ground floor in Armenia is the first floor or the 0th floor. And number two, horovat, the most iconic Armenian food. It's a barbecue grilled meat and vegetable mix, and there are many horovat places in Prosyan Street that we didn't get the chance to visit. But for now, we need to go back to Georgia and travel the rest of the countries in our plan. Yes, Kvera Dardam Hayastan. Armenia, I will be back. So stay tuned for the next video.